Recently, Dr. Kumar has received a lot of comments on his Facebook about the COVID vaccine. So he joins us this morning to debunk some of the myths surrounding the shot. Good morning, Dr. Kumar. Always good talking to you.
Good morning, Amanda. Good to see you.
I'm glad people are reaching out to an expert to find out what is true and what isn't. One of the comments, one of the myths that is out there that you mentioned is people are wondering about survival rate.
Right. They seem to get the math a little bit wrong. You know, early on in the pandemic, before we had the exact knowledge of how to use steroids when people were admitted, before we had the biologics like remdesivir, the mortality rate was around 3%. And that's what everybody was saying for the first 6 months. Mortality rate was 6%. But, after I post on Facebook, this segment here, a lot of the comments I got is like, why should we take the vaccine when survival is 99.97%? And I got that over and over again, 99.97. So there's this idea, there's myth out there that the survival rate or the case fatality rate is 0.03%. And that seems to be a common number. It was back to 3%. So if you want to take 3 away from 100, that equals 97. I think they're dividing by 100 once more again and coming up with a 99.97. Or else what people are sometimes doing is dividing the survival rate by the whole population of 330 million Americans that are eligible to get the infection, rather than just the number of deaths, 564,000, divided by the number of people infected, which is like 31 million. And so maybe they just got, one of these decimals out of place, but a 3% mortality rate was what was initially reported. And now, because we're doing better, because we have better safety measures, that mortality rate has dropped lower down to 2%. But it's still significant. If you look at the flu every year, right now there's 31 million Americans infected with COVID that we know of. Every year, about 38 to 40 million people with flu are infected with influenza, and only 50,000 deaths. And now we have 10 times, 564,000 deaths. So this virus is way more deadly than the seasonal flu. It's infected fewer people and killed 10 times as many. And so that survival rate certainly needs to be rethought about.
The other issue that has been brought up, fertility being affected by the vaccine.
And that there's no proof of that. Of course, it's early. It's been a year, and people that plan on getting pregnant sometime in their lives are concerned that this vaccine will somehow affect fertility for themselves or for their kids, and they're really hesitant to do that. But there's nothing about the technology of this vaccine, this mRNA vaccine, that's teleologically any different from all the vaccines that we take, the yearly flu shot, the HPV shot, smallpox vaccine, measles, mumps, rubella, that would make it any more, impair your fertility anymore. In fact, most importantly, the American College of OB/GYN, the ACOG, has come out and said that there is no data that they feel, and they're really supportive and they're very critical about anything that might affect fertility. And they've come out and said that there's no data that this will affect fertility. And so I think that the overall approach that people ought to take when they analyze the data, and certainly you're going to get a shot, or you're going to tell your loved one to get a shot, you got to do your own research, of course. But you have to weigh not just the risks, but you weigh the risks versus the benefits versus the alternatives. That's how we approach things in medicine. So I think that the risks are so far low. They're possible. People do have adverse reactions. The long-term risk, certainly we don't know until we know, but there's no reason to suspect that the long-term risk is going to be severe or affect fertility. The benefits are that you don't get COVID. Getting COVID can also lead to long-term complications. Getting COVID can affect your fertility in the long run. It can affect your heart. COVID could be a pre-existing condition that could lead to a host of other consequences. That's the benefits. The other benefits that we can end the pandemic. The alternatives to not getting the vaccine when you're eligible are just to continue wearing your mask, social distance, wash your hands, and at least if you're not going to get the vaccine, don't put anybody else at risk. And that's really the true alternative.
Yeah, and I do want to add there, the CDC is going to meet on Friday, a vaccine advisory committee, to make recommendations for the use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which was put on pause. And in Europe, the J&J rollout is now resuming after the European Union's drug regulator said that there is a risk, but as you mentioned, the shot's benefits outweigh that risk. We just need to be aware of the potential risks out there for us.
That's right. The number of blood clots that occur in COVID patients compared to the number of blood clots that happened with the J&J vaccine, 6 people got blood clots in the J&J vaccine. But if you get infected with COVID, that numbers runs, to the 60,000. Of course, I don't know the exact number, but I just mean that it's exponentially more to get COVID and get a blood clot. And so, yes, there has been some reported side effects of the J&J vaccine, but again, risk versus benefits. They believe that the risks are worth the benefits.
Yeah. All righty. If you have a question for Dr. Kumar, you can email us at askdrkumar@gmail.com and check out his website, drkumar.com. It's always good to see you, sir. We'll be right back.
You too, Amanda.